Biodiversity conservation refers to the preservation, protection, and sustainable management of biological diversity and the variety of life forms and ecosystems on Earth. It involves efforts to safeguard species, habitats, and ecosystems from threats such as habitat destruction, pollution, climate change, and overexploitation. Here's how to protect endangered species and contribute to biodiversity conservation. Habitat protection. Protect and preserve critical habitats and ecosystems that support endangered species. Establish and expand protected areas such as national parks, wildlife reserves, and marine protected areas to conserve biodiversity and provide safe havens for threatened species to thrive. Species recovery and restoration. Implement species recovery and restoration programs to restore populations of endangered species and enhance their habitat quality. Support captive breeding programs, reintroduction efforts, and habitat restoration projects to increase population sizes and genetic diversity of endangered species. Address threats and challenges. Identify and address the primary threats and challenges facing endangered species, including habitat loss, pollution, invasive species, poaching, and climate change. Implement measures such as habitat restoration, pollution control, invasive species management, law enforcement, and climate adaptation strategies to mitigate threats and protect vulnerable species. Endangered species legislation. Advocate for the enactment and enforcement of endangered species legislation and regulations at local, national, and international levels. Support laws such as the Endangered Species Act, ESA, and the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, CITES, to protect species from exploitation and ensure their survival. Sustainable land use practices. Promote sustainable land use practices that minimize habitat destruction and fragmentation, conserve biodiversity, and support ecosystem health. Encourage responsible land management, land use planning, and zoning regulations that prioritize conservation and sustainable development. Community engagement and empowerment. Engage local communities, indigenous peoples, and stakeholders in conservation efforts and empower them to participate in decision-making processes and natural resource management. Foster partnerships, collaboration, and capacity-building initiatives that promote community-based conservation and stewardship of natural resources. Education and awareness. Raise awareness about the importance of biodiversity conservation and the plight of endangered species through education, outreach, and public awareness campaigns. Provide information, resources, and opportunities for learning and engagement to inspire action and promote a culture of conservation among individuals and communities. Support conservation organizations. Support conservation organizations, non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and wildlife conservation groups that work to protect endangered species and conserve biodiversity. Donate, volunteer, or participate in conservation projects, research initiatives, and advocacy campaigns to contribute to conservation efforts and make a positive impact on endangered species conservation. Promote sustainable practices. Encourage sustainable practices in sectors such as agriculture, forestry, fisheries, tourism, and energy production to minimize negative impacts on biodiversity and ecosystems. Promote sustainable farming methods, responsible forestry practices, sustainable fishing practices, and eco-friendly tourism initiatives that support biodiversity conservation and sustainable development. Individual actions and choices. Take individual actions and make conscious choices to reduce your ecological footprint and minimize your impact on endangered species and their habitats. Practice responsible consumption, reduce waste, conserve energy and water, support sustainable products and businesses, and advocate for policies and practices that prioritize biodiversity conservation and environmental sustainability. By taking collective action and implementing these strategies, individuals, communities, governments, and organizations can work together to protect endangered species, conserve biodiversity, and ensure a sustainable future for all life on Earth.